Welcome to the Glazov gang. Tonight, our very special episode on the most powerful man in the world, Vladimir Putin. So says a recent issue of Forbes magazine, which had its powerful people's list. It named Putin #1 and Obama #2. Is it true? What are the circumstances and phenomena surrounding this phenomena and Forbes magazine calling Mr. Putin the most powerful man in the world? We discuss this issue tonight with a very special guest, Konstantin Preobraszhensky, a former KGB agent who is the author of the new book, KGB in Russian Diaspora, which has just been published in Boston in Russian. Vladimir Preobraszhensky, welcome to the Glazov gang.
Good evening. Good to see you.
Fantastic. Konstantin, before we get into the details, introduce yourselves to our guests and, not only to our guests, but to our viewers a little bit. Give us your background, your KGB background, and also how you left the KGB. And we're going to ask you to speak up a little bit because we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with the sound.
Okay. I was born in 1953 and I graduated from the Institute of Asia and Africa of Moscow University. My specialty is Japan specialist. I am interpreter of Japanese language, Japanese speaker, historian of Japan, and so on. I have spent certain KGB from 76 to 91. In the 80s, I was the correspondent of telegraph agency of the Soviet Union in Tokyo, TASS in Tokyo. I was working against China. We were spying China at the time. And I had to leave Japan based on the spy scandal regarding espionage on China in 1985. I am author of a lot of books on Japan. For example, the first Russian book on Japanese sports. It's called Sports Kimono. The first Russian book on Japanese youngsters is called How to Become a Japanese. In 1991, I just left KGB and began disclosing and began telling truth about what KGB is doing based on morality, on Christian feeling, on sincerity. The first book about KGB published after my leaving this organization was the book The Spy Who Loved Japan. It was published in Japan in 1994 and was a bestseller. But when Putin came to power in Russia in 2000, the persecution of people like me began. And I had to run away to America, and I came here in 2003, and I'm living here. Now I'm in America.
Thank you very much, Konstantin. Let us begin with this question. Is Putin really the most powerful man in the world?
Oh, yes, he is, I'm sure. I think the Forbes magazine is right. Just a recent example. Just a few days ago, Human Rights Court of Europe, European Human Rights Court, has refused to investigate whether Russia's investigation of the massive killing of Polish officers in Katyn in 1940 was good or not. It means that Europe has refused to continue this issue. It caused a greater disappointment in Poland. It's not really strange for Poland. They have abandoned Russian heritage, abandoned Soviet heritage. They returned to a family of European nations, and Europe betrayed them for the sake of Russia. It's just a mere example how strong Putin's influence is. It's strong not only in Europe. For example, in America, Radio Voice of Russia is working, but Radio Voice of America is not working in Russia anymore. Putin has closed its voice, has closed this radio in 2008. And one funny example, a few years ago, here in America, when I began pronouncing the abbreviation KGB, American scholars, think tankers began to interrupt me. They were telling me, oh, you're not right, KGB does not exist anymore. I was asking them, and what exists instead of KGB? They laughed. And they said, it's FSB, but it's only a part. But still, it's also a success of Putin. He managed American scholars to believe that KGB does not exist anymore and to argue with me about it.
Okay, so Konstantin, in other words, you referred to being a member of the Christian faith. I'm also of the Christian faith. We know that sometimes one of the tactics of Satan is to pretend that he doesn't exist. And so we could say the same thing, that somewhere the KGB changed its name to FSB and has tricked the West and tricked America, that the KGB is actually not even in operation anymore, but it is.
It is, of course, KGB may be only hidden. Putin has hidden KGB under the guise of a few separate ministries. But in fact, they are all together. They have common blood circulation, a lot of common systems. And what about Christianity? You know that today West is deviating from Christianity, but Putin is emphasizing Christian values. It has increased his influence in the West greatly. So even this factor is reasoning the growth of Putin's influence in the world.
Well, Konstantin, it's interesting and very intriguing that you bring that up, because myself, even somebody that's for freedom in Russia and is against Putin, he's taking the stance that Obama should be taking, standing up for persecuted Christians, against Al-Qaeda in Syria and the rebels in Syria. So this is not sincere on his part, correct? This is a game that he's playing?
Yes, unfortunately, the whole of the West is deviating from Christianity, and Putin is showing by all of his behavior that he's not West. For example, West is reluctant to Christianity and saying that all religions are equal, and Putin is saying something opposite. So just West is full of political correctness, which is making him very, very weak. And in Russia, there is no political correctness. So very many differences between West and Russia under Putin.
Konstantin, tell me this. Your new book, KGB and Russian Diaspora, deals with Putin KGB intelligence in America, that there is actually the continuation of spying in America by the KGB, which is something that we actually do not know, our society is not aware of and does not know about. Tell us briefly a little bit what the KGB is doing in American society.
Just the very fact that American society so easily believed that, that Russia has changed, that there is another country, that there is democracy there, that it has paved Western way, Western road. This very thing is the victory of KGB, victory of Putin. Their propaganda is very strong and convincing now. What about today? The just aim of Russian politics and intelligence, of course, is lowering America, making America not just as world power, but regional power. It's not secret. It's covered by Russian media, and they're doing it very successfully. The thing is that Putin's state is much more effective as it was in the Soviet period. You know, the Soviet foreign policy was very, very lazy, very primitive, and Putin has managed to combine intelligence and diplomacy under the leadership of intelligence. Intelligence are running Russian diplomacy today. That's why it's so aggressive and successful. What about interior life? The KGB state, of course, does not allow people a lot of freedom, but in the foreign policy, it's very, very effective. Putin managed to organize quite new system of state in the world, which has never existed. State of KGB state. It's like just in Russia, KGB has substituted Communist Party, but Communist Party was very just passive. It was led by elderly old people. It was exhausted, and KGB is young, full of energy. Its power abroad is very, very strong.
Thank you, Konstantin. We're going to ask you to try to speak up a little bit because we're having a little bit problems with sound. Konstantin, your book also deals with how Putin exerted quite a bit of influence over President Bush back in the day, and especially of how Russia had blocked the search for American POWs in Russia. This is an issue that I was following very closely throughout my life in my youth, because let's begin with this. Am I correct that there were American POWs from Korean Wars and from Vietnam Wars or whatever wars that were shipped to the Soviet Union? Am I correct?
Yes, you are. And in the 90s, Russian media told a lot about some Americans who still survived in Russian prisons or in Russian psychiatric hospitals. and there was somebody to look for. But Russia has joined with America a joint committee for looking for prisoners of war and missing people. But under the guise of cooperation, it has just blocked Americans' activity in the Russian territory regarding this issue, and not a single American soldier, prisoner, was ever found, though they lived. Secondly, Putin made a brilliant spy operation, making President Bush to accept in his Oval Office Russian war criminal, General Shamanov. It was in 2007. Putin made it intentionally in order to put some dust of war in Chechnya onto Bush, and this operation was very successful. Bush has accepted General Shamanov in the Oval Office as the head of the Russian part of this commission looking for prisoners of war and missing persons. He didn't know that in Russia we don't respect prisoners of war and missing persons so much. For us, Russians, it's not a problem. Russia never was looking for such people, and he thought that in Russia it's also, like in America, such a great respect of them. But so Putin has achieved his goal even in this issue.
In stifling the search for American POWs, which were shipped to the former Soviet Union, as a former KGB agent, Konstantin, I just want to talk about this a tiny bit more. From what wars were these POWs transferred to the Soviet Gulag?
First of all, from Korean War, even from Korean War, and mostly from war in Vietnam.
Why was it done? Why was it done?
You can't ask such a question to a communist country just because they wanted to have American hostages, American prisoners in their territory, to interrogate them, to leave them forever. Maybe they can be used somehow, but the thing is that such people can never be returned to America, so they did not tell Americans what they have suffered in Russian prisons or psychiatric hospitals. But Americans hoped that such kind of people could be found in Russian territory.
Well, Konstantin, and so what's happened in your knowledge and what you write about in your book is that Putin pretended that he was cooperating with America in terms of doing this, but through the guise of cooperation, he stifled the search, right? And we're always projecting our Western values onto how KGB and communists think. We care about the individual. We care about our soldiers. But you're saying that we project our caring and our values, but in fact, in communist ideology and in the Soviet leadership and former Soviet leadership, they don't care about these individuals.
Of course, not at all. Now it's just the same. I don't see any special difference between today's Russia and Russia of the communist period. It's like the change of scenery, like in the theater, because all the people who were in power in the Soviet period, they all are in power now. What is new? I don't understand.
Right. So in many respects, many people argue that the Soviet regime never collapsed. It collapsed in one way, but all the former leaders in the KGB are still in power, like Putin, right?
Yes, many other too. Just for example, one of the surviving leaders of Politburo, who is very old now, he was specially appointed recently to a very high governmental position to show the world that Russia respects the communist leaders of the Soviet Union.
Konstantin, what's going on with Mikhail Khodorkovsky, briefly?
I don't know. The thing is that we do not know the real reason of his being in prison. He is a so-called ritual sacrifice of Putin's regime. He has tried to frighten all other business world, saying that this fate may be your fate. And this is very successful. Russian business world has bowed down before Putin, like many Westerners also do.
Konstantin, the state of freedom in Russia, you would argue that there's absolutely no freedom inside the country anymore, right? There's no political opposition and there's no freedom of speech. Let's end with that on that note.
The thing is that now in Russia, KGB is controlling everything, and the opposition too. So they allow some sort of freedom, no other demonstrations. Even Putin is allowed to be scolded personally. But everything is under KGB control. So it is imitation of democracy to which West believes. But at the same time, it gives Russian people some possibility to express their dissatisfaction. but also under control. In the minimum sphere, minimum extent, KGB allows some form of social protest, but the most of leaders of the opposition are controlled by the KGB.
Konstantin, why did they kill Alexander Litvinenko?
Because he was speaking too much. He was speaking too much. And he knew Putin personally. Maybe he knew some information which was very, very concrete, detailed, related to that person's. That's why I think he was killed. He was tried to be killed a few times before. He told me that there were some other attempts. But the latest attempt was successful.
Anna Politkovskaya?
I don't know. It was too long time ago. I don't know what were the nuances. I remember that she was criticizing Putin in a rather despising manner. Maybe that was one of the reasons. But in such concrete situations, it's very, very hard to judge precisely.
Konstantin, thank you for being such a brave man and coming to the side of freedom and giving us all these warnings. I think it's just a disaster today with Obama in power. Putin and the people that lead that regime have no respect for Obama. Your departing words, what would you say that the West has to do in confronting Putin and Russia today?
West is already under Russian control. I don't think that the West can do anything now. The thing is that...
Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there. Are you saying that that the United States is under Putin's control now?
Not the United States as a country, of course America. But what about Europe? It all depends on the Russian oil. What are main key factors which allow Putin to be the most influential person in the world? It is, first of all, Russian oil, which is used as a tool of political pressure. Secondly, the great number of Russian agents of influence in the West, here and in Europe. Soviet Union also had many agents, but now they are much better. Their number has grown and their quality is much higher. The third factor is the weakness, spiritual weakness of the West, especially of Europe.
Konstantin, thank you very much, but what is our hope? Within 15, 20 seconds, what is the hope for us? What can we do?
You can't do anything.
So you're very pessimistic. You think the tide is, it's not going to turn? You think they've infiltrated the West too much also?
To study, to understand what's going on, to change some Western views, to get rid of Western prejudices and stereotypes about Russia. West was too much adorned with the fact that communism has collapsed. It has not collapsed.
Yeah. Communism did not collapse, and we were hoodwinked, and in that camouflaging way, Putin was able to gain a lot of control.
Communism is very useful now, nothing more.
Konstantin, thank you very much for joining the Glazov gang. Большое спасибо. And hopefully you will come back again soon. Thank you. Thank you for joining the Glazov gang this week. Good night.